Okay, so far we looked at uh, um, on the cursing psalms and the judgment psalms from class 1, 2, and last class we looked at um, place of over this one, language of liberation and the language appropriate to place. So that was from Prevalence book. And so today's in the fourth class, we'll look at Psalm 88. So Psalm 88, like I said, most of us have already attended this one. So in one of the devotional by Alec Mottier, in his devotional, he titled this psalm as "Darkness Without Light and Trust Without Hope." So in this psalm, especially, there is no hope. Almost all of the psalms ends in hope, even though it starts with despair, it starts with complaint, it starts with lament and cursing and judgment, but it ends in thanksgiving and praise. But Psalm 88 doesn't end like that. It ends in darkness. But the psalm still hopes, and it says, so he titled this "Trust Without Hope." So there is no hope, but he still trusts Yahweh. So that was the point that he's trying to make, Alec Martyr, in his devotional. So this is Psalm 88, the superscript of Psalm 88, the title, a song of sons of Korah to the choirmaster according to Mahalath, Leonoth, the maskil of Heman the Ezrahite. So it starts with, O Yahweh, God of my salvation, I cry out day and night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ears to my cry. So this kind of language, incline your ears, turn your ears, rise up and listen to my words. And this kind of language is very common in the Psalms. But even though whatever is going in the psalmist's life, he starts with the psalm with, O Yahweh, God of my salvation. So it's not that by the end of the psalm he is hopeless. When he is in that hopeless situation, he began to write the psalm and he began to talk to God. And when he begins to talk, even in the midst of darkness and even in the midst of despair, he says, God of my salvation. He still trusts Yahweh. Yahweh is still God to him. Yahweh still is supreme and sovereign in his life, even in the moment of darkness, even when he sees no way out of the darkness. And he's still pleading with God, let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. One of the recently I was reading one of N.T. Wright's book, and he was saying in the music, most of you are musicians, so you will know this better. But when we hear music, when we hear guitar, we hear keyboard, we hear drum, we hear bass, we even hear the backup vocals, and so everything comes together and makes the melody, and it makes sense. But when we write something, it's not like that. We have to write one line first, and then second line, and then third line, and then by the time the entire thing is written, the whole thing makes sense like in music. But music hits you like all at once, and it's beautiful and it makes sense. But written language is not like that. It has to be one after the other, and only when we get to the last, then we're able to make sense of the whole thing. So in that way, even though the last line ends in darkness, so it's not that by the end of the psalm he realizes that there is no hope, but he realizes that even before, and out of that darkness, out of that despair, out of that hopelessness, he cries out to God. And that's the beauty of the psalm, is that he still holds on to God. Yahweh still is Yahweh for him. Yahweh still has the same place in his life that he would otherwise have in normal times. So that's the beauty of the psalm. That's the beauty of his faith. That even in this darkness, he starts the psalm as Yahweh, my God of my salvation. I cry out day and night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. For my soul is full of trouble troubles, and my life draws near to Sheol. So a couple of words I've underlined. So this word Sheol, as most of you already know, what in the morning Bible study, Sheol is a place of death, a place of death, and it's not hell. Hell is different. In the Old Testament concept, it is Sheol, and in Greek it is Hades. So it is where the dead people go, the righteous and the evil both. But they have their own understanding that even in the Sheol, the righteous people have some kind of separation from the righteous, from the wicked, but they all go to Sheol. That's their understanding. So once they go to Sheol, they have no way of coming out. That's their understanding. And so he says that my life draws near to Sheol. So once he's dead, and that's why again and again, psalmist, in many of the psalms it says, "Who will praise you? Will the dead praise you?" Because for them dead do not praise. In Sheol, there is no way to praise God. That language we see again and again in many of the psalms. So he says, "My life is drawing near to Sheol, is going to finish. So I'm counted among those who go down to the pit." Again, so this language, Sheol language, the death language, is also coupled with the imagery of pit. In many of English translations, if the word is only pit, the Hebrew behind that would be in most cases the Hebrew behind that would be Sheol. So it's the same. It's conveying the same thing: a place of pit, a place of death, place of hopelessness. And so he says, I'm counted among the dead who go down to the pit. I'm a man who has no strength, like one set loose among the dead. Again, the word set loose is underlined. We'll see that in the next slide. So again, like one set loose among the dead. So again, Sheol, death language, pit is a death language. Again, death is obviously death language. And then, like the slain, they lie in the grave. Grave again is a death language. So, and like those whom you remember no more. In Hebrew, understanding remembrance is a very important motif, important aspect of their theology, of their understanding of their relationship with God. So that's why many of the even God says, remember me. When you do this, remember me. When you go into that land, remember me. So remember is from both sides. God will also remember, and the people are also commanded to remember. And he says that, like those, I'm going to be dead, like those whom you remember no more. For an Israelite to think that he will not be remembered by God is like death itself. It cannot get worse than that. When Yahweh does not remember you, it cannot get worse than that. For they are cut off from your hand. Again, the cut-off language is in many of the instances in Torah, the cut-off language is there. If someone does something terribly bad, they are cut off from the inheritance. They are cut off from they are cut off from the Israelite people, and of course the hand. I've shared this before also, when the hand motive is very prominent, especially in the story of in the narrative of Joseph. And Joseph was thrown into the pit, and so the narration goes that one of the brothers wanted to rescue him from the hands of his other brothers. So hand also shows favor, the power, whoever holds the power. So his hand was upon me, that kind of language. So again and again, there is a beautiful in the narration, in the story of Joseph, there is a beautiful connection of hand. You see the hand language in if the hand is substituted with any other language in other translations, that obscures the beauty of it. But if in the Joseph narrative, if you see hand, rescued from this hand, or delivered into their hand, and then Potiphar gives everything into his hand, and then Potiphar's wife grabbed his cloak by the hand, and then he goes to the prison, and then then everything again he's taken out of the prison, and everything again is given back to his hand. So the hand motive is very prominent in that story and in the Hebrew writing as well. So cut off from my hand, which means not just power, but the one who provides, but the one who cares, one who has power. So it's saying, like those few remember no more. That's one of the saddest and gravest thing a Hebrew can say, and to be cut off from Yahweh's hand. That's like death to them. And so this language, set loose, which I've underlined. If we see another translation like RSV and RSV, it's forsaken, and NSV and Message translation, it is abandoned, and maybe it is set apart. In the Baker commentary by John Golding, it says an outcast, and in the devotional by Alexander, it says free man. So the concept here is like a one set loose among the dead. So he is forsaken among the dead, he is abandoned among the dead, he is set apart like the dead, or an outcast like the dead, and a free man. Free so Alexander, what is trying to say by free man, so or the concept of free man here, or set loose, is that he is set loose of this life. Like one set loose from this life, and the dead is thrown. So that's the concept, that's the thought that the psalmist is trying to bring up. So he is set loose from this life, and he has nothing to do with this life now. So he is forsaken from this life, abandoned from this life, set apart from this life, but an outcast from this life. From the view of this life, he is an outcast, and he is a free man. He has nothing. He has no share or no worries or nothing to do with this life. That's why he is a free man in that sense. So, and the next verse says, "You have put me in the depths of the pit." Again, the death language, depths of the pit. So he's not in just the pit; he's in the depths of the pit, in the regions of dark and deep. You see, the death, and the darkness and deep is again playing with the same concept. Like I said, music, when it hits, it makes sense, but words, you have to. So when the writer is narrating something, he'll use words in such a way that each word will reflect reflect the meaning to the other, and the chain of words will convey a meaning, a thought. So in here it is the death language. So pit, and dark, and the regions of the dark and the deep. And your wrath lies heavy upon me. You overwhelmed me with all the waves. Again, the wave language is the sea. The sea, in the ancient Near East, in that context, sea is referred to as, or thought of as a chaotic and life-threatening place. And so that's why when it says overwhelm me with waves upon waves, it's like the death language again. So there's a little break here, Selah, which we can discuss, and many of us have seen this word in the Psalms. And we don't know the meaning of this verse, this particular word, Selah. All we can do is we can assume, we can make educated guess, but that's a guess. And most whatever meaning that we give to this word, it's still a guess. But most people lean towards that it is a musical notation or a musical break. Something like that in the psalm, but that's still a guess. And then you have caused my companions to shun me. So next it says, because he's in a position, for whatever reason, whatever happened to him, all his companions have shunned him, and you have made me a horror to them. I am shut in so that I cannot escape. He is in a place that, and he says, my eyes grow dim through sorrow. This my eyes grow dim is those who are in the morning will see in the next few classes this language of eyes grow dim. So wherever the eyes grow dim is mentioned in the Psalms, it is dealing with. So it says, "My eyes grow dim through sorrow." So the language is that he is closer to death. He's closer to death, and his eye is growing dimmer because of sorrow, and he's closer, getting closer to death. And every day I call upon you, O Lord. But he's every day. The beauty of the psalmist is that even in the midst of this, um, whatever situation he is in, the death situation that he is in, where he is almost set apart from this life and abandoned from this life and forsaken from this life, separated from this life, he knows there is no coming back, but he still cries out to God every day. He calls upon the Lord. I spread out my hands. Again, spreading out your hands is complete surrender and complete dependence on Yahweh. And he does that even when you see there is no hope. So do you work wonders for the dead? Again, the death language. He knows that once he's dead, he's asking a rhetorical question to God. So do you work wonders for the dead? Do the departed rise to praise you? Again, the sailor. Do the departed rise to praise you? So he is, again, the rhetorical question. He's questioning God. And he's putting a rhetoric question, not just questioning God, but he's putting a rhetoric question, which the answer is obvious. So that's the concept of rhetoric questions. That the one who is being questioned doesn't have to answer. The answer is obvious in the question itself. So is the steadfast love declared in the grave? Is your steadfast love declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in abandoned? So if you see abandoned, the place is destruction. The meaning of abandoned is place of destruction, place. But if we just take this word aside and try to understand this word in isolation, then we will not be able to capture the thought that is running through. So it's not just a place of destruction. So he's like all the musical notes. He's using all the words that conveys death, that conveys chaos, that conveys lifelessness, hopelessness. So abandon is just place of destruction. So it adds to that. So every word he uses it carefully to make the clear to paint a picture of death and hopelessness and destruction. So abandon is place of destruction. So, and that's also we have to, when we are reading Psalms or any literature, especially in the Hebrew, they are very particular with words, how they form the word, which form of the Hebrew word they are using, and which word actually they are using. So, for example, in the flood narrative, there are two different words for destroy, two different Hebrew words for destroy. So that's how the Psalm, when other scribes from the Torah, they are quoting when they try to refer to an event, they will try to use the same particular word that is used here. Let's say if destroy, a particular form of destruction, or the word destroy is mentioned in Genesis, the flood story. And if, let's say, a minor prophet Amos or someone else is trying to relate or trying to point out this, not point out, how do I say this? It's trying to refer to this event. They will use the same Hebrew word there. They will not say another word. So they will not substitute that word with something else. They will use the same exact Hebrew word. So we have to be very careful when we read the narration to not miss these little nuances that will help. Like in the story of Joseph, like I said, in some of the versions you will not find hand, but in place of hand you will see other substitute like power. He was he was given over to someone else. So he will not see handed over to someone else, but given over to someone else. But that obscures the Hebrew thought. When you see hand in Hebrew, in the Joseph narrative, you see the chain and it makes sense. And the reason the hand is mentioned again and again is because he's trying to weave a story, a narrative that is interlinked, And so that we have to, and that's what is going on here. So he's using the death language, death, pit, and abandon, and all those things, and darkness and deep. And also all the righteousness in the land of forgetfulness. Again, forgetfulness, there is no remembrance in that place. So forgetfulness, the Yahweh doesn't remember him anymore in that place. So all these words are adding up and painting up a picture. The psalmist is trying to paint a picture that he is going to that place, utter darkness, which is chaotic, which is death itself in the Sheol. So, but I, O Yahweh, cry to you. In the morning, my prayer comes before you. And again, said, in the morning, my prayer comes before you, which is, and you see this language in Psalm 5, where it says, every morning he prepares the sacrifice for Yahweh. Even in the midst of all this, he's not complaining. He's still, as a faithful Jew, every morning he prays to God. Every morning he is bringing his obligations before God. Every morning he's bringing his laments to God, his prayers and petitions to God. He's doing that faithfully, even though he sees that there is no, it's not going to benefit him. He's still doing his part. He's still holding on to Yahweh. He's still holding on to Yahweh. He's still trusting God without hope. And so, oh Yahweh, why do you cast my soul away? Why do you hide your face from me? Again, hide your face is one of the saddest things the Hebrew can think of, because in Numbers 26:24, the blessing is that the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. So he said, bless you, keep you, make his face shine on you. So blessing and keeping is related to his face being shown on the Israelite, and his countenance upon you and give you peace. So everything that the Hebrew needs and requires for a good and healthy and happy and prosperous life is when Yahweh's face shine on them. That's when they are secure. That's when they are provided for. That's when they are taken care of. That's when they are protected. And that's when they have peace. And so to say that hide your face is that there is no favor. Yahweh is forgotten them. That's what the concept is. So hide your face, we will not, if you just read why do you hide your face from me, we won't be able to understand the gravity of the situation when he is writing those words, because those are not just words for him. What that actually means is not being the beneficiary of God's favor. And afflicted and close to death from my youth up. So he says he's been afflicted and close to death all his life. From my youth up, I suffer your terrors, I'm helpless. So this helpless we'll see in the next slide. But now your wrath has swept me over, your dreadful assaults destroy me. And he even in the situation, he's saying that all this that is happening is because of Yahweh's wrath. Even though he acknowledges that, but he also acknowledges that it is only Yahweh who can help him, and it is only to Yahweh that he should cry to, and that's what he's doing. They surround me like a flood all day long. They close in on me together. You have caused my beloved and my friend to shun me, and this is the last verse where it ends. My companions have become my darkness. So which means darkness is my only friend, in other words. You have caused my beloved and my friend to shun me. My companions have become darkness. He is in such a terrible state that he has no friends left. The only companion that he has is darkness, his grief, his sorrow. And he ends the psalm in darkness. So the last word in the psalm, in actual Hebrew, is darkness. So that's how the psalm ends. Well, the psalm doesn't begin with this. So, like I said, when the psalm is ending, it ended for us now in this verse. But the psalmist, when he entered work, when he sat down, when he started to communicate with God, he was already in this darkness. He already was in this state of feeling, or in the state of mind, that his companions was darkness. But he chose to start the verse the way it does. Yahweh, God of my salvation. And so that's the beautiful beauty of the faith of the psalmist. And the word helpless that we saw in verse 15, one that I've underlined, I suffer your terrors and I'm helpless. So in different translations, it is rendered differently. That's because if you have a footnote on this Bible on this verse, it will say that the Hebrew word here is uncertain. In many places, you will find this that the Hebrew for this, the meaning of this Hebrew term is uncertain. For the reason is especially for this word afuna is that it is a hapax legomenon. Hapax legomenon is a term which is used for words that are only found once in the entire Old Testament, or in the entire Hebrew literature, or in the entire corpus of the literature that we have. So it depends from context to context. For in this word right now is hapax legomenon in the OT. So in OT, in the Old Testament, other than this place, this word is not found anywhere else. And so, and because this word is not found anywhere else, it is hard to understand what this word actually means. So different translations have tried to render render this words differently. That's the reason. So ESV had tried to explain this as I'm helpless. Other translations have other renderings. That's because this word occurs only once in the Old Testament. So now let's focus on Heman. Who was he? The psalmist. And it says the Psalm of the sons of Korah. And if you have paid attention to the superscript is the title of the Psalms, where it says the Psalm of David and so to the God Master so and so. So on the top of the Psalm, there is a title, and that is called superscript. In many of the superscript, you might have seen this Sons of Korah, Psalms of the Sons of Korah. So a Psalm of the Sons of Korah to the choir master, according to the Mahalat Vinayat, a maskil of Heman the Ezrahite. So he's Heman and Ezrahite, and he's also among the sons of Korah. So we have not touched the superscript till now, even in the morning class, but we are going to soon. And you will see that the superscript plays a major role in our understanding of the shape of the psalms, the psalm. For now, we'll leave that because that gets a little technical. So when we reach there, because morning people have already gone through a lot, and it's easier for them to now understand what we'll be going through. But for now, in the evening class right now, it is very early, so we'll skip this because that is a different topic altogether for superscripts, and that is a beautiful topic, and it makes a lot of sense to understand how the superscripts plays a major role in our understanding of the Psalms. So sons of Korah, he's one of the sons of Korah. Among the sons of Korah, he's Heman, he's an Ezrahite. So First Chronicles 6 says, these are the men who served and their sons of the sons of Kohathites. So of the sons of Kohathites, first is Heman, the singer, son of Joel, son of Samuel, son of Elkanah, son of Jeroham, son of Eliel. So there is Heman, and there is son of, which means the Heman and the generation goes up, back, and back. And then in 37 we see son of Tahath, son of Asir, son of Ebiasaph, son of Korah. So son of Heman, and then a lot of generations in between, and there is son of Korah, son of Izhar, and son of Kohath. So Chronicles is trying to explain who Heman is, why is he a Korah, also why is he a Korahite, and also a Kohathite. You see son of Korah, and then in 38 says son of Kohath. That's what you see in here. Sorry, it is Ezrahite again. That's a completely different one. So he is from the lineage of Korah, but again, the Kohathite, some people have tried to explain it in different ways. And so let's go Chronicles. Yeah, first Chronicles 6 is done, and First Chronicles 15 it says David. So these are the men who served, and these are the men who served, and so these are the singers. These are the choir these are the royal choir of David. And 15 says, First Chronicles 15 says, David also commanded the chiefs of the Levites to appoint their brothers as the singers who would play loudly on the musical instruments, on harps, lyres, and cymbals to raise sounds of joy. So the Levites appointed who? The first name is Heman, and the son of Joel. It's the same one. And of his brothers. So Heman, again, the name comes first. Heman. Always the important people comes first, right? This and his brother this and his brother this. So Heman is again pointed out. He is appointed first, and then his brothers Asaph. So see, Heman always holds a place of prominence. And then of the son of Merari, the brothers Ethan. Ethan, the son of Kusha. Ethan is the one that you see in the next Psalm. Psalm 89 is written by Ethan. So he's one of the top in the choir of the royal choir, where David appoints them. And so Heman was also seer in 1 Chronicles 25:5. It says, all these were the sons of Heman. Again, Heman, sons of Heman, the king's seer. So Heman was a king's seer. Seer is the one who guides the king of the future to help him take wise decisions. So according to the promise of God to exalt him, for God had given Heman 14 sons and 3 daughters. So Heman was very important. He played a major role in the he had a major role and major position in the choir, in the Levitical choir, and also that he was son of king's seer. He was king's advisor, and because he wrote many psalms, he was from that. He was a Levite, from among the Levites, and he also was the what do you call it? One of the major figures there. So all his life he made songs. All his life he praised Yahweh. All his life he worshipped Yahweh and led people to worship Yahweh. And this Heman, for whatever reason, whatever happened to him, he ended up in that place of darkness. But his faith throughout his encounter with God, throughout his relationship with God, and throughout his life, the encounters that he had with God, that encounters and that faith kept him alive. That encounters and that relationship with God kept his faith alive, even in the point of death, even when he was in complete darkness. So that also helps us that the importance of being in a relationship with Yahweh, being able, or the encounters that we have with Yahweh, and the kind of relationship that we have with Yahweh, that helps us, and that relationship with Yahweh carries us through in our difficult times, in our darkest times. So these are some of the points that I drew from Pastor Tim Keller, who has another wonderful preaching on this psalm. He says, darkness can last a long time for believing Christians. And there is no better place. There is no place better to learn about the grace of God than in dark times. There is no better place to become a person of greatness than in dark times. Darkness can be relativized. So these topics, when I was going through that video by Pastor Tim Keller, and because I have studied other materials from him also, he, in his studies, in his talks, and in his preachings, he refers to Derek Kidner again and again and again. In many of his preachings, most of his material comes from Derek Kidner. So Derek Kidner, we saw one of the comments from Derek Kidner in this psalm also, and in many other places I've used Derek Kidner's commentary. And so I also used Derek Kidner's commentary, and I was able to see when I listened to that preaching and when I read that to the source, which Pastor Tim Keller was using. So I was able to, it was very helpful. And so these are the combination of both. And so darkness can last a long time for believing Christians. For us, faith, for us, especially Christians, we don't want to talk about darkness, and we don't want to talk about the length of the darkness. But the psalmists and their relationship with God does not depend on whether they are in favor of God or whether they are out of favor, like in this case, this person. And even Job, a beautiful example. Even when he had nothing, his relationship with God did not change. And that the length of time, the duration of his suffering did not deter his faith. So darkness, when we read these kind of psalms, we have to understand that darkness can last a long time, even for believing Christians. And Walter Brueggemann, whose materials we have been using so far, in one of his commentaries, which is called Message of Psalms, he says, the failure of God to respond does not lead to atheism in his case. The failure of God to respond does not lead to atheism. But today, in many of our churches, we see people stop fellowshipping, people stop coming to church because their prayers were not answered, they were not delivered for in whatever situation they were, and for whatever situation they were praying and crying for, they did not get their answer, and that led to their backsliding. But the failure of God to respond does not lead to atheism for the psalmist, or doubt in God, or rejection of God. He's not abandoning God, he's not doubting God, he's not even rejecting God, this psalmist. So failure of God to respond does not lead to atheism or doubt in God or rejection of God. It leads to more intense address. Like in this psalm, we saw that every morning he does that, and he cries out to God, spreading his hands. So it gets intense. It leads to more intense address. This psalm, like the faith of Israel, is utterly contained in the notion that Yahweh is there and must be addressed. So Yahweh is there no matter what, no matter whether you feel His presence or not, whether you feel it in, we in the modern in our modern life, we go by feeling. I don't feel God's presence. I don't feel this. I don't feel like praying. I don't feel like this feeling. But for Israel, feeling does not count. For them, whatever they are going through, God is there. He is there. The feeling does not determine whether God is there or not. For them, God is there no matter what. And He is not only there, He must be addressed. He must be addressed. And so that's why in the Psalms you'll see they will cry out to God and they'll say things, all the things that they have to say. Even in utter darkness, they'll cry out to God. Even though when it says darkness is my only companion, He's not talking to darkness. He's not referring to darkness. He's not talking to darkness. He's not conversing with darkness. He's talking to God. Darkness is beside him. He's not looking at that. He's talking to God, he's looking to God. And he's addressing God. Yahweh is there and he is being addressed. Yahweh must be addressed even if Yahweh never answers. That's the faith of Israel. Yahweh must be addressed even if Yahweh never answers. Like those Daniel's friends. That our God is able, but even if He does not come to deliver us, we will still not bow down to the idol. So Meshach and Abednego. That's the faith of Israel. Even if God does not answer, their faith will not be shaken. Even if Yahweh doesn't answer. So they say that Yahweh can and He's able, but even if He doesn't, that's their word. He can and He's able, but even if He doesn't, we will not bow. That's the faith of Israel. It doesn't depend on what we get in return. So, and then Derek Kidner again, in the Old Testament commentary, he says, first, it's witness to the possibility of unrelieved suffering for a believer's earthly Lord. This kind of psalm is a witness that it is possible. Of unrelieved suffering is possible. It is a possibility of a believer's earthly Lord. What if that is what God has allotted to someone? And we want to say someone, not us. Let that someone not be us. That's our position. The happy ending of most psalms of this kind is seen as a bonus. When Yahweh delivers, that's seen as a bonus, not as a due. Yahweh is not obligated to deliver. Yahweh is not under any kind of obligation to deliver us. Whatever He had to do, He died on the cross and He delivered us already. Other than that, He's not obligated to do it. Even that dying on the cross and saving us from the death was a grace. That was not our due. Because our due was the wages of sin are death. That's what our due was. But what we got was grace. And so beyond that, anything that we get is bonus. And if our prayers are answered, that is bonus. That's not a due. God doesn't have to answer. God does not. God does not have. God does not have to cater to our needs. God does not have to deliver. God does not have to heal. God does heal people, but that He does not have to. He is not under any kind of obligation to prove His sovereignty, to prove His relationship, to prove His greatness, and to prove His goodness. And it's withholding. So it's not a due. It's withholding is not a proof of either God's displeasure or His defeat. So when He is withholding, it's not a proof of either God's displeasure that He is not pleased with you or His defeat. In Job's case, He was not displeased with Job. He was, in fact, very pleased with Job. In the beginning of the chapter, we see that He was very pleased with Job. And when Job suffered, it was not Yahweh's defeat. But when Job suffered and came back again, then Yahweh, in fact, Satan was defeated. The whole point of Satan was that Job is praising you because he's getting in return. He's being blessed. Whatever he does, you're blessing him. That's why he's God. That's why he fears God. That's why he fears you. That's why he fears Yahweh. And that's where Yahweh challenged him, took the challenge, and just go ahead and touch it. And there's no place better to learn about grace of God than in dark times. So, justified through faith, we appear. So this is Romans 5. We have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace. So we have gained access into this faith, access by faith into this grace in which we now stand. And we also boast in the glory of God. Not only so, we also glory in our sufferings. Because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, hope, and hope does not put us to shame. This is Romans 5. It's a beautiful verse, but very uncomfortable. Because it says we glory in our sufferings. We don't. We crave and cry and get angry, and it's not a good place to be. Suffering is not a good place to be in. But Paul says that we also glory in our sufferings because suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, hope. So suffering produces character, and this character brings humility, and that's when we understand God's grace. And so the next thing is, there is no better place to become a person of greatness than in dark times. Everybody we see, the patriarchs, the major figures in the Bible, everyone has their own dark times that they had to go through. And when they went through that, when they came out of that, that's when they shone, and that's when they became great. And that's how they are remembered as great people, great men of God, great men of faith. So there's no better place to become a person of greatness than in dark times. So what they're trying to say, is God brings the suffering and this thing to sharpen us, to prune us, and to purify us like that gold that we see in the New Testament. And one of the apologists, J. Wallace, puts it this way. He says, courage is only manifested in the face of danger. So if there is no danger, there is no way to show courage or manifest courage. Courage is only manifested in the face of danger. A world without suffering has no empathy. For someone to show empathy, there should be suffering. And charity and self-sacrifice. Without poverty, there is no charity. So poverty is suffering. If there is no poverty, there is no charity. So, and forgiving. You have to have some ego that has been acted upon in order to forgive. Someone has to do something bad to you, only then you'll be able to forgive them. Only then the question of forgiveness comes. So he says, it turns out that all the character values that we want, so he's referring to atheists, even as atheists meaning who don't believe in God, who says that everything is just random. So to them he's saying that courage, empathy, charity, self-service, self-sacrifice, and forgiveness, these character values, we all cherish these character values. We all want these character values. We all want to embody these character values. But he says it turns out that all these character values that we want as atheists, you can't get unless you have a world that causes these virtues to rise to the top. So, and the last point is this by Derek Kidner. This is also taken by Pastor Tim Keller. So he says the author's name allows us, with hindsight, to see that his rejection was only apparent. See the opening comments of the Psalm. So, like I said, he opened the Psalm with God of my salvation. His existence was no mistake. There was a divine plan bigger than he knew, and a place in it reserved for most carefully for him. So darkness can be relativized. What he's saying is, Heman, when he was suffering, when he was going through this, he felt the darkness so big, he felt the darkness so huge that he could not see anything past that. But still, he addressed to God, and for him, Yahweh was there, and he addressed Yahweh. His faith was not shaken, but he died in that. Maybe he died in that suffering, and for him, the darkness was his only companion, and darkness was the only thing that he could see. But he says, from the time it was written and throughout the centuries, the reason this psalm is in the Bible, which we'll again see when we do the shape of the psalms, how it was compiled, we'll see that because of the importance of psalms, the psalm becomes important. Any writing becomes important when it is used again and again. If it falls out of use, it will not be remembered. The reason it is remembered is because it never went out of use. So when it was first written, people kept using it because they could relate to it. People only use things when they're able to relate to it. So psalmist, when he wrote this psalm, or when he was going through this, he could see, for him, the darkness was huge, and he could see nothing other than that. But when we see that this psalm was included in the Psalter, in the canon, as inspired word of God, and then it has been used centuries after centuries after centuries, and even till today, it's been more than 3,000 years. This psalm has been there, and it has blessed so many people, those who have taken the time to meditate on this. And people, the Hebrew scribes, the Hebrew authors, the people got chosen, anointed, and ordained to compile the psalms and put it together. God inspired them to put this psalm in there, because this psalm spoke to I would say hundreds and thousands of people throughout generations, millions of people so far. And so the darkness that he saw so big, when we look, the light that it has shown to millions from then on till now, his darkness, the kind of blessing this psalm has been for whole Jewish community from the exile till now, even before the exile till now, and because he was Heman, he was before exile, because he was during the time of David. So obviously he's before exile. So during the monarchy, after the exile, when they came to Jerusalem, when they rebuilt Jerusalem, and then when everything was destroyed, when Messiah came, then again the temple was destroyed. Until now, this psalm has been a constant source of reflection, constant source of meditation, constant source of encouragement and hope for people who are in darkness, who can relate, and their faith is encouraged and edified. So when he sees what his psalm, what his situation has done, and how God has turned his darkness into the light for so many millions, then the darkness that he suffered compared to the light that it shone to millions is very insignificant. That's what they are trying to say. The darkness can be relativized. But we see huge darkness. For us, God can still use that and flip that around and use that darkness, use that suffering of ours in a very big way. Maybe we will not be alive to see the effects of that, but that's God's purpose, that's God's plan. It's God's job to do that, not ours. Ours is to, whatever Lord is given to us, we faithfully stick to that. So that's the whole point that Derek Kidner was trying to say. So if there is hardly a spark of hope in the psalm itself, this psalm, however, for this supposedly God-forsaken author, Heman, seems to have been one of the pioneers of singing guilds set up by David, to which we owe the Korahite Psalms, one of the richest veins in the Psalter. So he was the chief, he was the head of the Korahite. And he says, and the Psalms that the Korahites have produced, it is one of the richest veins in the Psalter, in the Psalms. Burdened and despondent as he was, his existence was far from pointless. For him, when he was actually going through that, he might have felt that his life was pointless. But now when we see the kind of psalm that he produced from that pain and suffering, it was a living death for him. In God's hand, it was to bear much fruit. So even when we are perishing in God's hand, it will still bear fruit in God's plan. So we have to stick to His plan. We have to trust in His plan. We have to trust in Him, even though we may not understand what is going on. But God is God, and He knows what He's doing. And this is one of the. So this, I think, this book. Many of you have already seen this book or have read this book. In the preface or introduction of this book, the one who wrote this introduction, Gordon Albert, says, "To live is to suffer." This is the philosophy of the one who wrote this book with Viktor Frankl. So to live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the sufferings. He says, if there is a purpose in life at all, if God has given this life and if there is purpose in life, he says there must be a purpose in suffering and dying too. If there is purpose in life at all, there must be purpose in suffering and dying too. Suffering is not pointless, and dying is definitely not pointless. In God's scheme, even suffering has a purpose. So are we willing to submit to that? One of the devotional that I have is my utmost for His highest. So a couple of days back, my wife shared some quote from that devotional, is that if God uses you, or if God's plan or purpose for you is to be a doormat, to be used and abused by people, and to heap abuses and heap dirt on you, you should still be grateful that you are in God's plan. That's a radical faith. That's the kind of faith that we are called to have. Complete surrender and complete dependence on God. Not that our relationship and our faith should not be determined by how filled I am, how happy I am, or how healthy I am, or how my family is being provided for. But the faith should depend on God's sovereignty, on when God is God in our life, no matter what we're going through. That's the kind of faith that God accepts, that God expects that we should have. That's the kind of faith that Israelites had. So the author, like Job, does not give up. He completes his prayer, still in the darkness, totally unrewarded, the taunt. So he is still in darkness, he is completely unrewarded, but he completes his prayer. He did not give up. The taunt that the Satan had was, does Job fear God for naught? Does Job fear God for nothing? And is answered yet again. So the question the Satan put to God, does Job fear God for nothing? Job answered that question, no. Job answered that question in positive. Yes, Job fears God for nothing. He does not expect anything in return. But even when he doesn't get anything, he still trusts God. God is still God in his life. Heman ends his life, ends his psalm in the same vein, that trust without hope, darkness without light. He ended his psalm. Even when he ended his psalm, he was still talking to God. God was still God. And that's the kind of faith that we are to have. That yet again, through our life, Satan will be put to shame. Job with his faith, he put Satan to shame. the question that he posed to God, that does Job fear God for nothing? Job, with his faith, answered that question. Time and time again, when we get this opportunity to answer that question, let us remember that when we answer that question, the way we live out our faith, Satan is being ashamed and God is glorified. And so this is the devotional where Alec Miller says, trust without hope and darkness without light. So many of you have already given me your emails. So those who have not, you can give me your email so I can add you, so then you can go through this sermon. Pastor Tim Keller used Derek Kidner commentary on this topic, and so you can watch this video. It's a wonderful video on this topic. So that's it for today.